Hello, and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Laura, and I'm delighted to be joined by three wonderful speakers today. So I would like to welcome Luca Vitali, who is an MVP and Solutions Architect at ACS Data Systems SPA in Italy. I would also like to welcome Anders Olssen, who is also an MVP and a security consultant from OneVin AB in Sweden. And finally, I'd like to welcome Marcin, who is an MVP and a SharePoint developer from Poland. And the topics that they will be speaking on today are Teams shared channels, security and compliance within Microsoft Teams, and how to integrate anything into Microsoft Teams. Remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is #ESPC23. Don't forget to check out the Resource Centre. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com and click the Content tab at the top. Continue your learning by joining us for our next webinar from Microsoft Teams Week, Microsoft Teams Governance Options for the IT Professional. This webinar takes place tomorrow, Wednesday, March 22nd, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. CET. For full details, please check out sharepointeurope.com/your guide to Microsoft Teams. ESPC 23 call for speakers is soon closing. Be part of something truly special. Speak and engage with leading experts, IT professionals, developers, and business decision makers at ESPC 23, Europe's premier Microsoft 365 and Azure conference. This is your chance to take a leading role within the conference and the community, sharing your in-depth knowledge, passion, and experience with your peers, in turn, helping empower the Microsoft 365 and Azure community to professional success. Please visit sharepointeurope.com/submit-speak-ESPC by today, March 21st, and submit your application to speak. The ESPC 23 Super Early Bird Sale is now on. Save €400 with super early bird pricing and join us in Amsterdam this year from the 27th to the 30th of November for 4 days of learning, networking, and inspiration. ESPC 23 will bring together members of the Microsoft 365 and Azure community from around the world to share ideas and solutions. Surround yourself with like-minded individuals at ESPC this November. Secure your super early bird tickets today and get ready for 4 incredible days of Microsoft 365 and Azure learning. Please visit sharepointeurope.com/pricing to snatch up this limited offer. The European Power Platform Conference programme is now available. This June, prepare yourself to deep dive into all things Power Pages, Dataverse, PowerFX, Canvas apps, Fusion Teams, and so much more. With a lineup of exceptional speakers and topics curated by an independent programme team, we truly believe this programme will provide you with the expertise to power ahead in your career and projects. Please visit sharepointeurope.com/conference schedule 2023 EPPC to find out more about the conference schedule. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentations. This webinar will also be recorded and added to the Resource Centre, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our first webinar presenter today, Anders. Hello, Anders.
Hi, and thank you. So, I'm not going to make a further presentation of myself. I've been working with Microsoft Security for almost 20 years. I've been an MVP for 12 years now with all the security stuff from Microsoft. And during this 10 years, I've been focused on the most part and important part for organizations, or information. So I've been working with data security, information protection for over 10 years now. So let's start with some screen sharing and hopefully that works. And since we are having a Teams webinar, let's use some Teams features. So hopefully you will see my screen and myself right now. So little background. why is information that important? And how can we use Teams to actually protect our information? First of all, I have a question for you. Do you know what age we are living in? I'm talking about everything from Stone Age, Iron Age. What is actually the name of the age that we are living in right now?
Sorry to interrupt, Anders, but I actually don't think we can see your screen.
You don't see my screen?
No.
Okay. I see it on my side. Let me see.
Maybe just they'll turn it off and back on again, maybe.
Yeah, or maybe stop using the nice Teams feature with myself as well. Let me see if I do like that. You see the screen?
No, I don't.
I can see it.
Okay, maybe it's just slow on my end so everyone else can see it. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, continue. So Anders will hear.
Okay. So we go back to the age that we are living in right now. The age right now is the information age, according to the subject as well. And some stunning facts around that. If you look at the information that we have today, everything that has been created from the start, from what was written in stones for 1,000 years ago to the information that we have today, 90% of that information, 90% have been created during the past 2 years. And actually these facts are almost 2 years old. So just imagine how much information that we create on daily basis in the last 2 years. It's a huge amount of data. And when it comes to sensitive data, we need to be in control of the information. So I'm going to take you on a journey how we can use Microsoft Teams to protect and govern our information in a secure way. To be able to do that, we're going to look at a typical business case or use case that hopefully you can reuse within your organization when it comes to handle sensitive information within Microsoft Teams. So we have in this case a project. The project name is Project Delta. It will include a lot of highly sensitive information. We are needed to be able to protect the information, regardless of where this information is stored and how it's handled and such. It need to be protected in all stages. And we're not only going to cover Microsoft Teams. We're going to use Microsoft Teams, but the information will be in Teams. It will be in Office files. It will be in emails, and also new stuff around meetings, meeting invites. It will be in Power BI. And the thing is, with this concept, the project leader of this project need to be in control over the information to be able to add and remove people so they're getting access not only to the teams, but also to sensitive content for this project. Okay? Here's the project leader. This is Peter Davidson. You got a project number and everything in place, and he is responsible. He is responsible for Project Delta information. This project will include both internal members as well as selected external partners and customers into this sensitive project. And first of all, he needs to invite the task to invite the real experts. It's actually me. He's going to invite me into this project, into his tenant. I'm a partner. I'm not in his tenant for now, but he needs to invite me to get access to the project and sensitive information. To be able to do this, we have done a lot of things in the background to make it easier for Peter himself. And of course, he's using Microsoft Teams. So he have a team site where he is an owner. Hope you see the screen right now. You see Microsoft Teams, you see the Project Delta team, and you see that we get a sensitivity of the Teams site as well. If you zoom in into this, we can see that it's including sensitive content, and we have made restrictions around sharing, guest access and such based on sensitivity. And Peter himself has the possibility to handle this project, meaning that he can invite people into the team to get access not only to Teams, By doing that, he also giving access to files, emails. What we have now was released in 2 weeks ago is that we also can classify meeting invites with attachments and such to only be shared with project members. And of course, you maybe need other solutions, for instance, Power BI, to be able to share analytics and data for the project members. And in that case, we are using the same thing as again. For Delta owners and members are the only one who get access to this content. Okay, how do we do that? Basically, nothing new. You've seen this before. To be able to add a user into a team site, regardless of internal or external user, he invites me to the team. So in this case, I'm a guest user to this tenant. I'm not part of it, but I'm a guest. Invite me as a guest into this team site. And now I'm invited to the team, which means I, of course, am hopefully getting access to the team sites, but also to protected content for this project. So in this case, we can see that we have a lot of sensitive information in the team site with different classifications. And it's Peter's responsibility to control access to Delta information. It's his responsibility to invite people to the team and have control over the team sites. And of some reason, someone have, by mistake or with purpose, put classified secret information into the same team site. Okay, let's see what's happened. I have got an invite. Let's switch to my organization instead. I received an email from Peter in this case with a link to Peter's team site. When I click on that one, it will change tenant from my organization into Peter's organization. And now getting access to the team site. Here you can see all the files included in the team. If we look at the sensitivity here and open up that part, we can see that you can see all the files. But if I try to open, for instance, secret information that is internally restricted, I'm not able to do that, mainly because that is classified as secret and internal information. But I should have access to Delta information. So in this case, we can, for instance, block downloading, blocking files to be open with locally installed Office apps and such. In this case, we have a business need for it. Maybe I need to open these files with local Office. This means that we will cache the file on my side instead of Peter's tenant. But what we're doing here is we remain the protection of the files. So you can see here that it's still protected. I can even save this file. For instance, within my organization, let's say that I have a couple of co-workers that also should join in this project later on, and we need to work on certain files locally. Maybe at our team solution or file servers, Dropbox, wherever. The thing is, this content is classified and protected within the project itself, regardless where this file have been moved and stored. So it could be emails, it could be meeting invites, it could be Power BI reports, it could be all kind of files that is classified and protected with Project Delta. What we did in the background here is that we are using Microsoft Purview and sensitivity label functions. And you know that a team site, when you create a new team site, it will also create a group for you. As soon as you invite someone to that team site, they will be part of the group. And what we did in the background is we're using the same group for also giving access to protected content. This means that for these local files that is now stored in another organization, Peter himself have full control over the information and the team site. So for instance, if you want to extend the project, including more co-workers from my organization, for instance, or other organizations, you can just add new members into the project. And in my case, my co-workers that are going to work with this, we already have the information stored in our location. And when they become a member into the project, they could get access to the content, to the meeting invite, to the Power BI reports, to the emails that have been sent previously within this project. And if I'm no longer within this project, it's Peter's responsibility to be able to control that. You don't need to call service desk. You simply do it by using Microsoft Teams. So what I'm doing here is he can manage the team, and he can actually remove users from the team. So what will actually happen here if we add users or remove users? If you remove my user for this team, of course I will lose access to the team site as well. But what about files? What about the emails? Let's see how it looks like on my end. So I have the document that is stored. Again, it could be stored in our team solution. It could be stored in Dropbox, on my local machine, wherever. If I try to open up the same document again, the default behavior within Office, it will try to authenticate you with your default account that you're already signed in with Office. That's why we doesn't need any additional passwords and such. So what will simply happen here is that Office will try to log me in. And if I don't have permission, it will prompt me with the login prompt if I have several accounts and such. So what I'm doing here is I try with the same account again. And now I no longer have access to the content. So this was just a short example what you can do with Teams where you control access of all kind of information with all kind of file types with one use case. And we got 4 minutes left. I have some other tips for you. Where should you start when it comes to security and compliance for Microsoft Teams? First of all, my first recommendation when using cloud services is to start with the identity pane. How do you control access to your cloud environment? For your admin accounts, I hope that you already are using PIM. For admin accounts, I hope that you have strong authentication, hopefully passwordless when it's a lot of business and such. And the control pane here is the Azure AD, where we have, for instance, Azure AD Identity Protection. We have conditional access that can perform a risk-based authentication, meaning that we should validate all access, both internally and externally, to Microsoft Teams. For instance, if I have a device that is managed, controlled, either by Intune, SCCM, it's compliant. It should have access. And the sign-in is without any risk with the sign-in itself. In that case, I get access to Microsoft Teams. If I, for instance, come with the same account from an unknown device we have never seen before with a risky sign-in, meaning that we have seen this IP before during attacks, we have a different behavior of the user or the sign-in, that pointing that it's actually not the real user that's signing in. In that case, we should block the sign-in to control and limit suspicious sign-ins. So that's the first part. The next part, when it comes to receiving files and links into our organization, we have the risk of malicious files and links. So in that case, we should use the product Microsoft Defender for Office 365 that have the feature of scanning files within Teams, looking at inspect links, for example. So in this case, if you should control uploading and control of files to Microsoft Teams, we have the combination of using also endpoint data loss prevention, where we can control what kind of content is approved to be uploaded into Microsoft Teams. So meaning that if I have a file, is it approved to be uploaded? Yes or no? If it is, it can be uploaded. And here we're using Defender for Office to inspect the file. Based on the classification of the content, we can also control if this file can be shared externally or internally, or the restriction of the content based on the sensitivity. When it comes to other discussions or dialogues or information sharing with Teams, we also have the Teams chat functionality. Here we are using the Teams data loss prevention to control what kind of content could be shared. And of course, we need to inspect all the links that are being transferred through Teams as well. with Defender for Office, that inspecting links. Look if they've seen them before. We have link detonation for new links that we haven't seen before, and so on. A lot of features to protect these files and links. And the last part, I have 1 more minute. If we have no control over the device itself, we have the possibility to do a session control, regardless of service, as long as we're using Azure AD as an identity provider. Meaning that if I come from an unknown device, we're using the Defender for Cloud App solution that could scan all the traffic, and we can control what kind of file can be uploaded, what kind of file can be downloaded, and restrict that with Defender for Cloud Apps. So that was 15 minutes with a lot of security and compliance stuff, how you can work with that with Microsoft Teams. I hope that you learned something that you can reuse within your organization. Thank you.
Brilliant, Anders. Thanks so much for a great presentation. That was really insightful. So now we're going to move on to our next webinar presenter, and that is Luca. Hello, Luca.
Hello. Hello to everybody. Thank you for the presentation, and let's start to speak about shared channel. Shared channel is a recently new features introduced by Microsoft last year after more than 1.5 years of development. So it was not easy to deploy shared channel, and I want to show you what the shared channel wanted to solve, which are the problems that are present in Microsoft Teams before shared channel arrive. So one of the most problematic approach of Microsoft Teams to sharing information is the creation of many channels into different teams. So many times we see many channels in different teams that manage the same kind of information. So we have a duplication of information that is not obviously what the customer wanted to see. So before shared channel, we see many channels duplicated, and we see and the multiple channel post do not solve this issue. So this is absolutely a problem. Another problem is that sometimes the customer wanted to manage the guest access to information. We have seen a very nice presentation before from Olssen that use Microsoft Information Protection, but Microsoft Information Protection not always is in place. So sometimes the customer create different teams, the team with the guest and the teams without the guest. So this kind of example, or the customer create a Microsoft Teams with a general channel where the guest could access, and many private channels where the guest could not access. This kind of approach both have problems, and is not, of course, the right way to manage information. So these two different problems are what shared channel wanted to solve. The other great problem that want to solve is the tenant switching from guest. So when a guest want to access information on another tenant, they have to use the tenant switching. That is not a great user experience, as you know. So these are the problem that Microsoft wanted to manage with shared channel. So shared channel is based on B2B direct connect. what is B2B Direct Connect? B2B Direct Connect is a new settings into Azure Active Directory, and is basically a new version of the old trust that we have in Active Directory. So who have many some years like me remember very well Active Directory and the trust between domain controller. Fundamentally, B2B Direct Connect is the same on Azure AD. So we have the possibility to create or establish a mutual trust between two tenants and create this kind of relationship. This kind of relationship is based on B2B Direct Connect. It's very important to remember that this kind of configuration need to be mutual, so need to be created on both the two tenants that wanted to start to sharing identity. Into Azure Active Directory, you can set up the B2B Direct Connect. You have to go to Azure Active Directory. You have to go to a new slide, a new blade that is present into external identity that is called cross-tenant access settings, where you can find the old B2B collaboration, that is the guest approach to collaboration, and the new B2B Direct Connect. In this session, we have no time to go deeper on the different settings. It's important to understand that you can establish a relationship between your tenant and the other tenant with very detailed and granular settings. You can choose who can access information on the other tenant via a single user or groups, or you can allow the connection between your tenant and the other tenant without any restriction. Okay. And this kind of settings is also important to understand that this kind of settings is are mandatory when you want to use a shared channel with another tenant, of course, not into your tenant. Another settings that is quite important is that you can improve the user experience with this kind of settings, allowing your system to rely on the multi-factor authentication or trust compliance on the other tenant. So if you wanted to improve, if you wanted to ask less authentication on your users, you can set this kind of settings, and trusting the other tenant and the security of the other tenant. This kind of settings require Azure Active Directory P1 Plan 1 license. So this is the Azure Active Directory B2B settings, and now we want to see the shared channel. What is shared channel? Shared channel is the first feature that use B2B Direct Connect. So there isn't at this moment any other features of Microsoft 365 that use B2B Direct Connect. This feature allow to share information with other tenant without creating guest accounts. This is very important. Guest account sometimes create some difficulties, some problem with external identity. So with the shared channel, you do not have to rely on guest anymore. You can use the other license, the other identity of the other tenant. Shared channel allow to access information between different tenants without the need of tenant switching. So you will see, and we see the other information from the other tenant directly into your team's roster. Okay. This is very important, for example, when two companies merge together. So two companies that was acquired from one of the other needed to start to work together, and it's very important to have a better experience than the past one with Ghost. with guests. Another very important feature of shared channel is the way to distribute to the information to allow the access to the shared channel in a very smooth way and more granular way that we will see in a few minutes. You can find in this link the detailed future comparison between shared channel and the other kind of shared channel. We have no time to see every specific difference. There are some limitations. It's very important to understand that the shared channel solves some problem, yes, but it's not perfect today. There are fundamentally 4 limitations. The first one, from my personal experience, I love Microsoft Planner, and in this moment we cannot use Microsoft Planner into a shared channel. The problem is the same compared to private channel. Shared Planner is based on Microsoft 365 groups. Shared channel and private channel do not work on Microsoft 365 groups, so we cannot add a planner into shared channel. This is what, for my point of view, and in my opinion, this is one of the most critical problem of shared channel. Is the first limitation of shared channel. We cannot use tags. Is not a big issue, but it's important to list this. There is no way to convert a standard channel to a shared channel, or vice versa. So you can, if you create a shared channel, if you create a standard channel, you cannot change the configuration. You have to create a new one and move the content to the new channel. And there is no way to allow a guest to enter into a shared channel. This is very important to understand if you want to migrate information, because if you rely on guest, you cannot move a guest into a shared channel. There is no way for a guest to enter into a shared channel. Okay, so remember this limitation. Let's see how we can enable shared channel. It's very easy. You can go into Teams Admin Center and add the settings. Normally, the default is these settings are enabled by default, but it's important to understand where you can go to allow shared channel to work. So how we can use a shared channel, how we can create a shared channel. I can create a shared channel in a standard way, so create a new shared channel, but it's important to understand that I can add a shared channel to another team. I can add into a shared channel one single person. I can share this shared channel with the external tenant. And let's see how we can use it in a clear way. So how we can create a shared channel is the same way we create a standard channel or a private channel. I can use the selector to create a shared channel. Normally you will see a new settings with shared channel that allow to share the shared channel with everyone in your team. We will see it better together. So normally leave these settings on. So you are in this way you create a shared channel that every users in your teams could access. Okay, it's like a standard channel in this way. So we create a shared channel. Shared channel use this kind of icons on the right. So every shared channel have this kind of icon on the right. So let's see how we can share the information. The idea of the shared channel is to allow the shared channel to be stretched, to be added to other teams. So the same repository information, the same post, the same files are could be accessed by different team into your company. In this example, I can add the car fleet news, for example, to another team. So these two teams could work into this shared channel like it was a standard channel into their teams. This Microsoft 365 news channel is shared with other two different teams. You can add a shared channel to another 50 teams. So every shared channel could be shared with 51 teams in total. I haven't seen this kind of sharing. I think 50 teams is a quite high cap, but is important to know. So when I access a shared channel, I have every features, post, files, tab, not planner, remember, and not tag, but everything else is supported. I can add a shared channel. I can add to a shared channel a single user. So sometimes you have to add a person external from your team to a single channel, and shared channel allow you to do that. So you can add, for example, Bruce Wayne to a single shared channel into your teams. What this mean? This mean that Bruce Wayne in this case will see only the content into Microsoft 365 news shared channel. He could not see anything else into the teams. Okay, so this changed completely the approach of information and teams construction into your company. You can share a shared channel to another team that you don't own. How can I do that? I will use the command in this example, share channel with a team. With a team, the system asks you who manage this team. You have to enter the name of the person, of the owner of the other teams, and this person receive an invite that say Luca is sharing M365 news with you. Do you want to decline or accept? Okay, accept. And the next he asks to Bruce Wayne in this case, which is the teams where you want to link, to add the shared channel to. So the system is these settings are quite easy in my opinion, and it works perfectly. Internally, it works perfectly. How can I change my mind after I create a shared channel? If you remember, when you create a private channel, there is no way to automatically add the new users to the private channel. If you create a private channel and then you add someone to the main teams that contain the private channel, you have to add or not the private channel, this user to the private channel. Microsoft solved this problem with the shared channel. It creates an automatic synchronization system that allow you to choose to synchronize the access to the shared channel to your team or not. So you can choose to create a shared channel that everyone in your team will see, and if you add new users, this shared channel will continue to be synchronized with the list of your team. Or you can choose to remove these flags to block the synchronization. When you block the synchronization, when you remove this flag, the users that have access to the shared channel remain into the shared channel list. If you add the new users to the IT department, in this case, these new users will not have access to IT budget in this example. Okay, if you flag again the settings, the synchronization start again, and so new users added to IT department gain access to IT budget. Okay, I hope this is quite clear. So this is very a great improvement compared to private channel, and you can another configuration that you can achieve is partially share this IT budget shared channel with your IT and your team, and share everything into IT budget to the whole group of finance teams, for example. So quite complex configuration. We have a few minutes, I think, and we will see now how we can use the teams externally, so shared channel externally. I've quite finished sharing channel. So when I use a shared channel to external users, I gain the great benefits to stop to use the tenant switching, because if I, for example, I'm a users in the tenant A that want to give access to my M365 news to a users into tenant B, for example, tenant I and tenant B merge together after an acquisition, for example, I can give to my new colleagues, in this example, the access to M365 news without changing their identity. The tenant B users will gain access to M365 news directly into their Teams roster. They do not need to change their identity. They continue to use their identity into tenant B, and is not created a guest access into tenant A. This is a completely different between compared to the old guest and tenant switching approach. Let's see an example. This is the last slide. I hope that time is okay. So in this example, I wanted to share M365 news with an external users. We are in the tenant A. Okay, I'm sending a, let's see, this is not guest, this is external. It's important to see. I'm sending an invite to an external users into tenant B. Into the tenant B, he receive the access to the tenant A teams, and now we can start to work together after authentication. We can start to work together without tenant switching. Okay, this is a completely new approach that I'm sure you will love. Okay, I've finished. I hope that time is okay.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Luca, for another great presentation.
Thank you.
So now we will move on to our final webinar presenter today. But just before that, I do want to mention that if you have any questions on any of the topics, please feel free to type them into the questions box now. So let's move on to our final webinar presenter today, Marcin. Hello, Marcin.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Great to see you all. So today I would like to talk a little bit about integration of things into Microsoft Teams. Before we move forward, I hope you can see my screen. Yes, no?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Yes. Yes.
Looks good, lovely. Few words about myself. I'm Marcin. Here are my social links. You can find build stuff here. The main question is why? Why would anyone like to integrate into Microsoft Teams? First of all, I believe this is one of the most popular enterprise level application there is. The amount of users Teams got, especially at enterprise level, is absolutely unparalleled. And I do believe if you want to surface your application to your company, Microsoft Teams is the best option. Also, because it has absolutely amazing extensibility framework. I hope we can touch a little bit more on that later, why I consider this extensibility framework so good. But long story short, it just manifests at the page. So it gives you all of the flexibility you want. Teams is also backbone of company communication, especially after this troubling COVID times when we all moved a little bit more to home office. The Microsoft Teams has become the communication tool in many companies. And finally, it is available in web, in desktop, and on mobile. So very often when you want to expose your app in mobile, your company app, putting it in Teams is the quick win, best solution, great option. So yes, this is why. And before we move forward, we have to also address what do we mean by integrate anything into Teams. And I believe there are two main problems when it comes to integration. First of all is existence of API. Second of all is the authentication. When it comes to existence of API, there's effectively nothing we can do. If there is an API we can consume, we can somehow consume it. That's lovely, that's great. The only question then is, will it support cons? So can we call it from anywhere? Or do we need some kind of backend API to serve as the proxy to that API? But the most important question, especially in context of Microsoft Teams, is authentication. And this is why I would like to focus a little bit on how to handle authentication in Microsoft Teams to different data sources, data sources about authentication providers. And of course, because we most likely live in Microsoft-centric world, the first and most important authentication provider for us will be Azure Active Directory. So when you want to integrate an endpoint that is secured behind Azure Active Directory, we have few options. And I believe the simplest, most important one is using SharePoint Framework. Why? Because SharePoint Framework abstracts away a lot of authentication issues, and that actually involves magical things like single sign-on, which means with SharePoint Framework, with apps, with Teams apps built using SharePoint Framework, we are getting all that magical tokens. We are conversing third-party to first-party tokens, and we have seamless authentication to everything we need in Azure Active Directory. On high-level steps, how to do that. First of all, we have to handle the security using SharePoint Online Extensibility Principle. If you ever expose your existing API, so it can be consumed by SPFX, I mean, any authenticated Azure function, some kind of web application, you already used extensibility principle. This requires your application to expose a delegated scope. Once it exposes delegated scope, you can consume that, or say in Azure Active Directory that SharePoint will consume this particular endpoint with this particular scope. Once we have that, we can use, as I mentioned before, methods and classes provided by SharePoint Framework. We can use AAD HTTP Client Factory, which will automatically build for us authenticated client to our endpoint. Lovely. So if we can use SharePoint framework to integrate to our third-party system, whatever else, that is lovely. If we cannot use it, we can use Teams single sign-on in a custom app. So in Teams, single sign-on works in the following way. We register our application in Azure Active Directory in a very specific way. So number one is we have to comply to app ID URI property schema, which means it has to include API protocol, domain of where we host our application, and ID of our app registration. Once we have this, Teams app itself will be able to ask for a scope without an authentication prompt. To do that, we need to also add known applications as Teams and Teams mobile client. It's quite well documented on Microsoft's site, so I don't want to spend too much time on this particular topic. This is SSO configuration in AAD. And then what we can do with that token, because this is important thing, token we will get from single sign-on is token to our application on specific scope, which means we cannot use it to consume Graph or to consume SharePoint or any other API behind AAD. We can consume only our app. This is why it's quite a common practice to either implement token broker. By token broker, we mean in our app, we implement a method that converts existing token to our app to token to other system. We can do that using Microsoft on behalf of Flow. Actually, it's not Microsoft Flow, it's general. On behalf Flow is a general specification of OAuth 2.0. Alternative to this is also using Overflow, but serving a proxy, let's say, to Graph API using our using token to our endpoint. What's the difference between those two? With token broker, you send the access token, let's say, to Graph API back to the front end, and with on behalf of proxy, this token never leaves our server. So depends on security constraints. One or other solution will make more sense. Of course, there is also an impact on performance, because proxy will always perform a little bit worse than actual direct code with token obtained from token broker. And finally, I believe the most important and most interesting approach we can choose is use Teams SDK for authentication. And I can already prompt a little bit that this also works for third-party authentication providers. In particular, if you want to authenticate using Google, Facebook, Twitter, whatever other provider which implements OAuth 2.0, you can use that Teams SDK authentication flow class. So how do we do that? Because first of all, we have to call this magical authentication.authenticate method on Teams SDK. And what it does, it effectively opens for us a new prompt. And why it's important and why we cannot do it manually. The trick in Teams is that in web and in desktop, whatever your app is, it will be always embedded in an iframe, because Teams embeds personal apps, Teams tabs, message extensions into an iframe. And maybe in web, you will be able to open a new prompt from web, absolutely. But from desktop or from mobile, it won't be possible, because there will be no browser that can handle opening new window or new authentication prompt. This is why you need to use that SDK, which effectively opens a new iframe in a controlled way, but not exactly fully controlled, to which we will come in just a second. So we will use that authenticate method. And then once we will receive code or maybe token. It of course depends on the flow we use. Once we receive it, we can put it back into our existing flow. And what do I mean by put it back into existing flow? Because we may implement implicit flow, which means we will just get access token, and with that access token, we can call anything we want. That's the case. Another option is that we are implementing grant flow, which means we will only get our authentication code, and we still have to put that authentication code to our backend to receive actual authentication token. Now let's take a look at the diagram of what is happening, and I hope that can explain a little bit more of why there is some extra complexity here. So as you can see, starting from the left, we have our Teams app and our app opened in an iframe. I hope you can see this. This is what I mean. This is our app. When we start authentication, what is happening is we are actually opening a new iframe, which is controlled not by our window, but by the Teams window. So as you can see, we call authenticate, and Teams says, okay, let's open new window. And why opening the window one? Why we cannot use iframe within our application? This is because a lot of authentication providers does not allow it to be embedded. For example, you cannot use a login Microsoft.com in an iframe. I believe the same is for Google authentication. You cannot just open that in an iframe. It needs to be a whole new window. This is why we are opening, or Teams opens new authentication window, and then when we authenticate, it redirects again within that one frame. So this is still the frame controlled by Teams, and once we notify from our frame that that authentication is successful, it will notify our app itself. So there is some extra level of complexity, which also means whatever we redirect to in this window needs also to be aware of the fact that it's within Teams, because it will call Teams notify authentication success. Let's move forward. Now, third-party providers, and if we're using OAuth, we have the same case as we did with using Teams SDK for Azure Active Directory. We just use authentication authenticate method, and then passing the code forward. If there is something else than OAuth, then there is literally no problem, because if you're using basic authentication and any other authentication, you're just doing that. And Teams, there are no issue with this. Before I finish up, I would like to discuss two things, because very often when we build own application, let's say in .NET, and we want to authenticate to it using Azure Active Directory, we are registering it and we are running with OpenID authentication protocol. And there might be another problem, because if we're using OpenID authentication protocol, how we can allow authentication using tokens for tokens we obtained from single sign-on, for example. So here there is a very short code snippet. This is also available in my repo, in my blog, if you would like to take a deeper look into it. But what's happening here is we are effectively registering both OpenID and support for tokens based on do we have a token in header or not. And with enable token acquisition to call downstream API, we allow to get token to graph based on event authentication cookie for our app. So very nice, very smart thing. And with this, our application will work both with OpenID and with JWT tokens, which by extension means it will be supported by Teams single sign-on. And finally, the two last slides to discuss that authentication using Teams SDK we discussed. Here you can see a sample with Google. So you can see we have defined scope. And as I mentioned, we are calling this what are we calling this? Teams.js authentication authenticate. We provide URL to Google accounts. This is effectively our implementation for Google. And we provide a replay URL to some predefined page. On that predefined page, we need this piece of code. You can see our handler service, which will actually listen if we have access token passed in our query parameters. Then we will call authentication, notify success with that token. And as I mentioned before, based on the flow, it may be either token obtained with implicit flow or token obtained with grant flow. And I think on that note, that's all from my side. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marcin, for another great presentation. So that concludes the 3 webinar presentations today. Another thanks to Luca, Anders, and again to you, Marcin, for 3 great presentations today. So now we'll get into the questions and answers part. So if you wish to ask a question, you can still do so now. Anders has been answering some of the questions if they have been coming in, so you can check those out in the Q&A section. So the first question that I see here that hasn't been answered yet is for Anders, and someone is asking, is it possible to email a Teams channel? Where do you see the email to email, if you get me?
Good thing to unmute then. I think Luca can correct me if I'm wrong here, but shared channel doesn't have an affected administrator group. So in that case, you can't email the shared channel, right? You can email the team itself where you have the channel, but you can't email a channel. Since there is
there is no email associated. There is no calendar associated to share the channel. Yes, these are features that are based on Microsoft 365 groups, and the shared channel do not use M365 groups.
Yeah. So
brilliant.
Simply no. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I'm answering to some of the question. So I'm sorry, but I haven't seen any plan to bring tags into shared channel yet.
Brilliant. Just another question then here. This one is for yourself, Luca. So someone is asking, does the external user of the shared channel need a license?
Yes. The external users of the shared channel use their own account, so they have to have a business or enterprise license, because they use their account, their tenant, and their licensing. So yes, this is another big difference between guest and shared channel. You have to have a tenant, you have to have a Teams account and license. Yes.
Brilliant. So just another question in there. Someone is asking, when I search for contacts in Business Central, I keep getting something went wrong. Does anyone know why?
I'm sorry.
I don't follow that question at all. You, Luca?
I'm searching for the question because I
in the top.
In the top.
Business Central.
Okay, sorry. The client do not update. What's the best of it? Is there any plan? I do not find the question. Sorry.
I'll just repeat it there. Someone is just asking, when I search for contacts in Business Central, I keep getting something went wrong. Does anyone know why?
Into Teams, you cannot find contacts. So normally I do not get error, but I cannot find anything, because if I understand the question, Teams filter the contacts. Teams show you only users account. So if you want to search a contact that is placed in your Azure Active Directory, you cannot find it. They are into Azure AD, but the Teams filter it. I hope I have correctly understand the question.
As long as the user have a Teams license, it will show up as a user within Teams as well. And then global address list is also available in Teams. But I don't think that the question was something more like Business Central. I don't know what that is.
Business Central, I do not
skip that.
No, I do not use it. I'm sorry.
Brilliant. If the user wants, they can follow up with the question again. So I'll just finish off with the last question here. This one is for Marcin. So someone is asking, what is the best app that you have integrated into Teams?
I believe I answered that. I'm not sure if that's the best app, but the most interesting one was actually Google Drive, because for multi-cloud environments, it's a great tool to have, one search for documents both in Google Drive and in M365. So that was quite funny. There was also quite a lot of issues in the meantime related to how SharePoint handles specific pages and so on. So yeah, I believe Google Drive is, and this was the most fun.
Brilliant, guys. So that seems to be all the questions answered. So we might just wrap it up there. So on behalf of the ESPC community, we would just like to extend a huge final thank you again to the three of you guys for taking the time today to carry out this webinar. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. So that is the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. That is it for today, folks. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. Take care, and we hope we'll see you again for some more learning. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.